साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्।
Prati, you can start. It's 9:30 now, 7:30.
Yes, yes, just starting. Start with Sri Omkaram. Om Shri Sai Ram. Pranams at the lotus feet of our dearest Swami. We have an eminent speaker amongst us this evening. It's my honor and pleasure to be introducing her. Madhuri Dugirala, sorry for pronouncing it wrong, Madhuri Dugirala has more than 20 years of technology industry experience across the globe with a strong experience in managing, building and delivering end user products and services, cloud platform solutions and scaled ad services that serve millions of customers, resulting in high revenues for the organization while staying on the leading edge of technology landscape. She describes herself as an engineer by profession, a singer by passion, a globetrotter by interest, and a social volunteer by choice. She graduated in computer science from BITS Pilani. She joined Google in 2016 and currently she leads the Scale Services organization, which is globally spread out with its presence in 10 countries, 4 continents, managing services and operations across multiple regions and languages to support advertisers on campaign implementation, optimization, reporting, and creative excellence across products and customer segments. Their team vision is to be trusted experts enabling world-class vendor operations to drive customer success. She is currently the Senior Director at Google India. Her last stint was the Senior Director of Engineering at Microsoft, where she spent 12 years, 8 of which she spent in Seattle. Prior to that, she worked at a broadband wireless startup and services organization for 6 years, primarily in Europe, India, and North America. She's a strategic thinker, highly result-driven, passionate mentor who values inclusiveness and diversity and deeply believes in aligning teams around common mission and goals to deliver high impact. She's built and led strong, high-performing and talented teams, created an environment to empower and motivate team members to bring their best and achieve maximum potential. In her free time, she enjoys music, meditation, and reading. She also spends time during weekends teaching maths and English to high school children in rural areas of India through the internet, with a hope to inspire them to utilize education to build a better future. Thank you so much for gladly accepting to address this this highly energetic youth this evening, ma'am. Welcome. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram. I offer my humble pranams at the feet of Bhagavan. It's a privilege and honor to be speaking with this energetic and accomplished group today. But I have to say, whatever I speak is Swami's blessing, Swami's wisdom, and I really pray to Swami today that he speaks through me. Thank you so much for that kind intro. Before I start, I just want to offer my pranams to Swami with 2 chants. He has been my Guru. I call him my Adi Guru, and he continues to inspire me in every aspect of my personal and professional life. So this is why this chant is dedicated to him. Guru Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. And for me to really navigate this ocean of life, Swami has been there all throughout as a blessing. And this next chant is my offering at his humble feet. Ananta samsara samudratara naukaidabhyam guru bhaktidabhyam vairagya samrajyada pujanabhyam namo namaha Shri Guru Padukabhyam namo namaha Shri Guru Padukabhyam namo namaha Shri Guru Padukabhyam. So with that offerings at that humble feet and pranams to Swami, I'd like to share my experiences in leadership and spirituality, how those two are intertwined in my life. I'm not able to see the slides. Are they on the screen?
Ma'am,
Oh,
is
there.
it visible now?
Yeah, now it is visible. If you don't mind going to the present mode. Rati, would you be able to present the slide?
Ma'am, I'm doing that. Is it not visible?
The slide is visible, but you're not in the slideshow mode.
No, I went to slideshow also. I thought it was
Perfect. I can see the slideshow.
Great.
I'd like to start with Swami's quote. Leadership is idealism in action. And as simple as the quote sounds, I felt throughout my journey, it's not easy. It's really, really not easy to put all the idealism in action. And that's why we need amazing leaders and these great teachings we need along the life. So today my intent is to share some of my personal experiences of leadership and how spirituality has immensely benefited me in this journey. I don't want this to be a monologue. If you have questions at any time during my presentation, please stop me. I'd love for this to be a really engaging dialogue.
Madhuri, you can also ask them questions in between.
Yes, I'd love to do that. Thank you, Gopanaya. I just thought I'd share a few of the lines which I have been inspired from Swami. If you forget everything else in my presentation, remember one thing. Leadership is nothing but leadership of the self. When you practice leading from inside out, you will be a transformational leader. When you really practice this self-leadership, you use every ounce of your potential with inspiration instead of perspiration, with synergy instead of sacrifice, and wisdom instead of work. Throughout my 22 years of my life, I have never felt that I was working. I was always feeling that I'm gaining wisdom, I'm learning in this journey. I'd really want all your professional and personal lives to be like that. And when I was really, I think, a junior manager, I used to find it is very difficult for me to integrate what corporate teaches you as management and leadership and what I have learned through spirituality. But really, thanks to Swami's teachings, and he's been really guiding me throughout, I was able to integrate both of them. And let me tell you, what are the benefits of integrating both of them? I'm extremely efficient and productive because I always manage my energy. I don't manage my time. And I'll tell you how my spiritual teachings have helped in all of this. I have constant source of inspiration and motivation from inside. and I continuously experience a life of joy and fulfillment. And I've always felt I have my life back. I'm not giving my life, I'm actually doubling, tripling my life energies every time. And many people, and I'm not exaggerating, there are so many people who ask me at work, Madhuri, how do you manage to do that? You're a working mom, you have to take care of your house, kids, and others. And that comes to the reason why I'm excited talking here today. It's very difficult for me to explain a lot of spirituality in a corporate world. I just simply tell them, look, it's all about meditation and a few things I've learned through mindfulness and through some of my spiritual masters. I just leave it there. But this is a session I'm super excited about today because rarely you get this opportunity to tell a group of accomplished people how leadership and spirituality, one, can coexist together. Two, if they coexist together, what kind of miracles would you see? And when somebody asks me, what's the reason for my transformation? I just tell them one thing. For me, becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming myself. And it is precisely that simple and it is that difficult. Now, let me tell you a few things which have helped me. If you go to the next slide, I wanted to introduce you to this concept of what are the different layers of consciousness and how, as an individual, you can actually be a leader. This probably is very familiar to you. You must have read this through Swami's teachings, but I thought it's important to repeat this because this is the foundation of my leadership journey. On the left hand side, Swami has always preached that for you to be a trustworthy individual, for you to be really leading from your inner self, your thought, deeds, and actions, they really have to merge together. And if you look at the top circles, if your thoughts and your words and your actions and deeds are very separate, people will see through. On the ground, it's very difficult. And if you hear things like, oh, that's just a lip service, the person is just doing it for a check mark, because people will see through. People on the ground are much smarter than what you think. A trustworthy somebody who can integrate all of this, which is why I've always learned from Swami's teachings, say what you do and do what you say, walk the talk and practice what you preach. These three things I do day in and day out in my leadership journey, and that is precisely what is that the bottom Venn diagram is all about. That once I integrated my thoughts, words, and deeds, I continuously hear from my team saying, Madhuri, you're very authentic and very genuine. That's because I think words, thoughts, and actions are coming together. I think if I look back on what made me a leader I am today, these are the four things I've heard very when I was very young. I would say in early 20s, I've heard this in one of Swami's teachings. Leadership process is these four things. One is to be as a leader, to do as a leader, to see as a leader, and to tell as a leader. These sounds very simple phrases. How do you be? How do you do? How do you see? How do you tell? But it takes a lot of evolution inside you and a transformation. And if you go to the next slide, let me explain you these levels of consciousness. Swami has talked about it, Maslow has talked about it, Burnett has talked about it, many philosophers have to talk about it. But I thought I'd guide you through this and where I think you can make a leapfrog and start. I think number one is survival. Survival is you're merely satisfying your physical and survival needs, which means your body, your home, your needs around you, you're taking care of your shelter, clothes. But if you are in a survival mode, there's always this fear, maybe I don't have enough. And when you don't have enough and that feeling, you're constantly in that survival mode. Let's say if you are able to get out of that survival zone, the next is relationships, which means your basic needs are met. And relationships are all the relationships you have with your family, spouse, kids, friends. But there is this sense of, am I feeling protected? Am I getting loved? You have expectations from others. And anytime you go through a hard relationships or any good relationships, but you have expectations about, Am I loved enough? Am I loved enough? But I think the next stage to go from here is give all your love and imagine that all that love is coming from inside you. And once you have met your needs of survival and relationships, then it's about self esteem. Feeling of self worth. There's a constant thing, and those of you who are in other industries, you would have heard this word imposter syndrome. It's very, very common for many of us to go through that, where how much ever you do, you constantly have this feeling of I'm not enough, and you doubt your own self worth. And there's a fine line, by the way. I've always told people that doesn't mean you're overconfident about who you are, but at least be confident about who you are. And don't be underconfident and don't bring down your self worth. The moment you get out of your survival mode and your relationships, you feel absolutely loved and you have your self worth, that is the beginning of transformation. And by the way, this is true for personal and leadership, and I'll connect that in a minute. First is your transformation begins as a leader when you let go of your fears and when you start living with the courage of developing and growing continuously. That is the beginning of the transformation. And I'd say if there is one thing all of us have to try is first get to that level 4 consciousness, which is begin your transformation journey. And there is no tomorrow for that. If at the end of this talk, all of us commit and say, this is where we begin every single moment of the day, then your transformation, both personally and professionally, would happen at an exponential phase. I think once that transformation begins, is next, your next 3 levels of consciousness begin. I think the next level is internal cohesion, which means you find meaning in existence. You understand the purpose of your life, your purpose of why you're doing your job, and why are you going to work every day. And I'll tell you mine. I'm a computer science engineer. At least for the first few years, I thought I'm just going because I'm designing some products, I'm shipping good quality. Later, it evolved to no, I'm making impact by delivering high quality products to the customers. I evolved, and finally, I would say in the last 10 years, I get up excited from bed every single day because of one thing, which is I want to make a difference in the lives of people. That's what I realized why I'm excited to go to work. And how do I do that as a leader? I get to do many things. I get to set a vision. I get to develop people in their careers. I've also influenced them on how to live a more purposeful and meaningful life. So I think the more you are cohesive within you, you will find the meaning. And the reason I'm stressing so much is a lot of you have heard do what you love or love what you do. And if you don't do either, it'll be miserable for you going to whatever work you choose to do. And I think that's what I have learned through my spirituality journey, that I did a lot of soul searching. Finally, spirituality helped me that I would like everybody to live very happy lives. And that's what I go to work with, that I help them in developing their careers. And that comes to the next one, which is once you feel you find meaning in your existence in this universe, then it's time to think about what is that positive difference you're making the world. This session itself for me is a great testimony and example of why such leadership programs are run. Because we want to create amazing leaders like you in this world who actually go out and live your vision, whether it is Swami's vision or other goals of the world. But all the goals of the world are all about let's make positive difference in the world. Let's make the world better than what we have lived today. And for me, I've realized over the years, I probably find it very difficult to sleep peacefully if I don't have this feeling. Like, whatever way, I think you don't have to do these big, bold things. Even a simple smile and a simple, kind act you can do to another colleague or a friend at your workplace, that also makes a difference. And there are so many things we could do by uplifting the culture, which I'll share a few examples. Last, and the highest form, I would say, of consciousness is selfless service. In my 22 years of career, I sometimes feel sad that I have not met many leaders who I put in this category. And I see a lot of them in my personal spiritual world But only very, very, very evolved leaders really stay in this zone. And this zone is super important because until you go through this 1 to 5 levels and you have the strong intent to make a difference and you're selfless about it, continuously doing the service, you will not reach that zone. There's a reason why this is. If you go to the next slide. So what are the 7 stages of our psychological development? Because these two are very aligned. I've spoken briefly about it, but I want to introduce you to a few words. If you're in your conscious level 1, that means you're surviving, you're satisfying your physiological needs, which is how to stay alive, how to keep your body active. Then once you go to your relationships mode, you're conforming, which means you're keeping safe, you're getting nurtured by those around you, family, friends, colleagues. By the way, there is nothing wrong to be at any of these levels. It's just that we all want to evolve together. So if you're any level, there's nothing good or bad about it. But the goal of a human life or a leadership life is always to get evolved. I think when you find ways to be admired and recognized by others, that means you have this feeling of differentiating. And I'll be honest, I was there as well. At least 10, 15 years ago, if somebody didn't admire me for what I did, or if somebody did not recognize me for my excellence, I felt, I would say, disappointed. But only later I realized that it's, don't hesitate your own self-worth, and it's not defined by what others say. Give generously. That's when you come to your individuating state. How do you balance all of your conditioning together and start your transformation journey? Then you actually begin self-actualizing. You begin with fully understanding your purpose and lead a value-driven life. And I'd like you to remember this phrase: leading values-driven life is going to be extremely important, and I'd say most fulfilling for you in your leadership and personal journey. In my entire career, I have stuck to my values and principles, and majority of them I've imbibed either from my parents or from Swami's teachings. And it is really hard to stick to your values, but I can't tell you the amount of joy you have, but by always living true to your values. And then it's about integrating your existence with those around you in the world. And finally, be in the state of serving, which is fulfilling that destiny and always leaving that legacy and great gift for the world. And if you go to the next slide. So this is where I've connected both, and I've explained both of you to them on how for you to evolve from a survival to service, how you need to develop your stages from surviving to serving. So ask yourself, I think the left side is all about statements and phrases, but a better way to ask yourself is, where am I today? Where do I want to be tomorrow? And where do I want to be in this life journey? And start on this journey immediately. If you go to the next slide. So there are so many things about leadership, and I think I can talk to you for not just 1 hour, probably 1 month and 1 year. Leadership and spirituality, they're absolutely a journey. But I picked 3 things, mostly from what I have learned through Swami's teachings, and I'll share a few personal anecdotes. I picked 3 things. One is, how is selflessness very important and how it is the foundation of leadership. Second, how do you make decisions? As a leader, day in and day out, you make the decisions and you're encountered with a lot of tough situations. How do you make decisions? The last is, what are the attributes of successful leaders around the world, and how I have learned of 7 critical things from Swami, which have probably helped me to build more than 20 leadership attributes. So these are the 3 things I decided we'll go deep dive into. Selflessness, how do you reach selflessness? What are the attributes of great leaders, and how do you make good decisions as leaders? I think the one line which has inspired me from Swami is, selfishness is human, selflessness is divine. From my childhood, one thing I've always been inspired by Swami is, how do you realize the divinity in yourself and how do you realize the divinity in others? And that's not any different in leadership. When I go to work in the morning every day, I constantly think, how do I be of service to everybody around me? And this line may be hard for me to say in big corporates, but in this group, because I have a lot of closeness with this group, because we are all on a similar path, I can definitely say that I selflessly serve because I believe in divine. I believe there is divinity around me in my work, in the people I work with. So if there is one thing I'd like you to start on is think about how do you reach this selflessness? And that is the foundation for great leaders. If you go to the next slide, but how do you get there? How do you get to this selflessness? How when you have a vision? Swami has taught in his teachings, and I think the things I love the most are these two things. Focus on character, focus on knowledge. How do you build a good character? There are three things as a leader which you can focus on as you develop them. One is, do you have the courage? Do you have the courage to be a leader? Do you have the courage to do the right thing? Do you have the courage to set a vision which is very bold and stick to it? Second is willpower. And I thought I'd read out something about willpower, which I think I have heard from Swami in one of the things, and I think I really like this. I thought I'd like you to share this with you. Nothing in the world can take the place of willpower and persistence. Talent will not get you there because nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with great talent. Genius will not get you there because unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not merely get you there because the world is full of educated people. If there is one thing that is persistence, determination, and willpower, these alone are omnipotent. And I have heard this from him, and I can so relate to it. In our leadership journey and life journey, there are so many obstacles, there are so many things, but never, never, never give up. If it is an important vision for you, your organization, or yourself, have the determination, have the persistence to go through it. The third is initiative to be a self-starter. I think this is something where I found very differentiating than many other leaders in the corporates I have worked. I rarely wait for leadership to be given. And this is what I've learned from Swami in many of his discourses, that what stops you from taking the initiative? Effective leaders, I've realized, are always ahead of the events. They do this by anticipation. They do this by overcoming the difficulties, and they constantly are on the lookout for the opportunities. And these are absolutely the abilities and signs of initiative. In one line, if I have to say, people of initiative, they are self-starters, and that's what makes them dynamic. Rather than, and by the way, I work with a lot of senior leaders. I still hear sometimes people say, oh, no one told me to do this. I was not ordered. I did not know. And believe me, nobody in the senior leadership teams appreciate people like this. And most of the times I have figured out ways when there are white spaces, when there are opportunities, and that comes when you're in that zone, because when you feel you want to be of a service, you constantly think of opportunities. For a minute, let's assume we've done this. You have the courage, you have the willpower, you have the initiative, and you have the right character. But that should all, and this is what I think is a tip of the iceberg. But if you go to the bottom of the iceberg, what is super important is knowledge. I think knowledge and wisdom are the foundation for any leader's ability for people to be respected. For you to be respected in whatever fields you are, you need to have the knowledge of your job. You really need to know what an individual contributor to a manager, to a leader does. Understand the pain and pleasure of what happens on the ground, which means be ready to roll up your sleeves. Be ready to roll up your sleeves, learn what it takes. And I'll give an example. Whenever we had a new engineer or a new salesperson join, I learned this from a leader. He would tell them, for the first 3 months, don't do your current job. Just be on the ground and do whatever this other individual contributor does. Because if you don't know how to sell, if you don't know how to write a code, or if you don't know, I'm giving most of the examples from IT industry, but this is true in all industries, be it, I think, law or doctors or chartered accountants or anywhere. But I think the have the expertise. If you don't have deep knowledge of what you do, you won't be respected. I think the second is ability to deal with people. I've heard this from Swami once or twice. He should say, if you're a good leader, you should know your team better than even what mothers do. When I was very young in my career, I used to feel inside, like after my kids and family, my team is like my family. But whenever I used to say that, I was like, would people really believe it? But I can't tell you, as I grew up in your career, that became stronger and stronger when people reported to me. I felt responsible for their careers and lives, which means you will need to listen to them. You will need to understand. You will need to be communicate to them. If there are tough situations, you will need to be able to hear out and solve those conflicts for them. I put all of them on your ability to deal with people, but it starts with, do you sincerely care about them? Do you know enough about them? Do you really want to know how to make a difference in their lives? And are you doing what is right as well? And I've read this book. It's called What Do World's Best Managers Do Differently? And it says one thing which I think has always inspired me. There are no bad people in the world. There is no bad character in the world, and there is no bad employee. It is all about, have you chosen the right role for the right person? For example, in that book, they give an analogy of a play. Let's say you're directing a play and you have a hero, heroine, villain, comedian, character artists. There are so many. You're not going to give the same role to all the people and ask them to do the same thing as well. And I think that's exactly what comes when it comes to people leadership. Only when you listen to them, only when you understand them, only when they believe you that you're doing the right thing for them, you will absolutely cast the right characters to the right role. So if somebody is not performing, go back and see what is their aspiration, what is going on in their personal and professional lives, how do you help them? I think the last is knowledge of self. When I started my career, I used to believe that IQ is the most important thing for you to be successful. Later, after 20 years right now, and I've been reading some books which says the research shows that 10% of the people who are successful because of their IQ, which is 10%. Majority of the success comes from your emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence. And I think if I have to describe both of them in one line, emotional intelligence is, do you know what emotions you're going through? Can you manage them? And do you understand them? And do you know how to not to portray them all over, but really balance them? That's emotional intelligence. But that really requires for you to know yourself. Do you know first to name the emotion you're going through? And can you also name what emotions others are going through? Put yourself in their place and deal with the emotions. That problem is not about what technology or what domain or is this the right server to use, but most of the time it's about the emotions people are going through. And my experience says 70% of my success has come from spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is again my journey of self, which is, what am I here for? What is existence? What is my purpose? And how do I love all? How do I service all? I think if you combine all of this and have that knowledge of self, then you will absolutely reach the center of the leadership, the foundation of leadership, which is selflessness. So, a takeaway for this for me to share with you is focus on building your character. That's what is visible to people. That's the top of the iceberg. The bottom of the iceberg is your knowledge. And if you integrate your character and knowledge together, the center is nothing but selflessness, and you have set an excellent foundation for your leadership. And once you are on this, believe me, you will set amazing visions. I think the kind of vision I've been able to set personally for me or for my family or for many, many companies I have worked with, every year or two, I have transformed the teams. And in this group, I can vulnerably share. When people think it's all Madhuri, I can tell you it's not Madhuri. All that transformation happened because I'm in that zone of selflessness. Many a times I tell you, I am stuck where I'm not sure, is this the right goal? Is this the right decision? But I really step back and think, and somewhere these things help. I definitely have the courage, I have the willpower, but then somewhere more knowledge of self, or sometimes The universe and divine guides me, saying that go do this. My intuition tells me I've gone and done that. You have to experience it. Unfortunately, there is no formula for this. If you go into that selflessness zone, you will realize that you won't do anything other than things which are transformative as well. If you go to the next slide. Decision making, and this is where I thought I'd give you a few examples. Let me start with a personal story which happened in a corporate. So this was, I think, back in 2000, I would say 7 or so. My mom was unwell, so I came to India. I took a 10 days off to came to India to get her all checkups done. At the same time, we were releasing a release, and I hired a new manager under me, which was just about 6 months before. Very smart, amazing, accomplished manager. He was going to take care of that. And then I came back from my India trip. Within 3 days after, there is an escalation, which went all the way until our CTO, just except CEO was Steve Ballmer at that point of time. Everybody else knows of this escalation. The escalation was we were creating a non-genuine, we were wanting to eradicate piracy on Office products. But we wanted to make sure that this does not affect our Army and Navy in the US base. And unfortunately, whoever has deployed that code, they forgot to uncheck. It's a common practice that we uncheck any of the government organizations so that it doesn't disrupt their software. And the person who deployed that forgot to do that. And then there were escalations all over. My boss called me and said, Madhuri, tell me who's this person who did this. I think we need to ask him to leave right away. I said, no, absolutely no way. It is not his fault. If there is somebody you want to hold accountable to, please hold me accountable. He said, I can't hold you accountable because you were not even there when that code was getting deployed. I said, I have 10 reasons why we should not hold that person accountable. Because one, that person is new. There was a developer who used to deploy this code regularly. He left the team 3 weeks ago, and that went to another developer. And his question was, yeah, it might have gone to another developer, but why did this person not test it? But I said, it was not a test case. For 5 years, we never had that test case. Why will suddenly think that? And I said, we will do it in the future. It's a mistake. It's a grave mistake. I would absolutely take accountability of it because I really wanted to promote him. He's been doing fabulous work in my team and even the previous teams. And it took an hour to convince him. And I think if there is one thing which has helped me there is as a leader, you have to take accountability of the failures. There will be tons of successes in our life, but we need to be the air cover for our teams. We need to stand up for our teams. And all said and done, by the way, that year my rating or my compensation or other things were affected. But I felt it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do when somebody really did their best and it was a mistake. But having said that, if I also ruled out and said, you know what, I was not there, that person did a good job, then who will take the accountability? And these kind of a things, I would say, they don't happen automatically. For me, it happened because the number one thing I learned from Swami's teachings is about trust, honesty, and integrity. Do the right thing, however hard it was. Although it probably, and everybody, I think my team respected me for that. And later, even my boss respected me for that. My boss said, somebody who can stand up for their team, he said, I'm sorry, Madhuri, I'm holding you accountable, I'm reducing your rating. I said, absolutely not. Sometimes we learn through mistakes. This was a grave mistake, and we learned through this. Learning through failures is an important thing in life. But that happened because when I looked at what Swami's thing has taught, like I had the courage to stand up for the team, and I also had an ability to have the knowledge of myself. Later, I think, by the way, that never impacted me in my successful career later. And that's the thing I want to leave you with from this story is if you do the right thing, it may be hard as a leader at that point of time, but later success will always come to you. Don't stick on to these momentary things of success or failures. And that's a good segue to decision making. And I'll share 2 examples of more decision making. But let me orient you this slide. And this is what, again, it is from Swami's book on Mahakavya. And then he also talks about how do you do decision making? And I've also compared it a few of the things I've learned with Richard Barrett. He's done a lot of work on leadership and consciousness. So the first thing I think all of you have to ask yourself is, where do you make the decisions from? Do you make the decisions using your senses? Do you make the decisions using your mind? Do you make the decisions using your ego? Or do you make the decisions using your soul? Now you can always ask yourself, really, in leadership and professional worlds, do you really use your soul? I think the answer is absolutely yes. And I'll tell you what may be the most ideal way. If you're not there, it's fine, but we need to get there. First is we do data gathering. I think at any day, if you have to make a decision, you need data. So the way you do your data gathering is through your senses. You see something, you hear something, and you observe a few things. So based on all of this, gather all that data. And once you have that data, your brain is actually processing all of this data because it's processing all the information, and then you have a few insights. There are three ways of decision making. One is you're using your body and mind. That means you're making decision with your instincts. Instincts are usually what comes immediately. You know, your immediate reactive things are typically instincts. So you can remember these 3 R's. You can be reactive, you can be responsive, you can be reflective. And if you remember these 3 R's, you can ask yourself, how are you making the decisions? So if you're making decisions using your body and mind, you're typically using a reactive way, and it is primarily through your instincts. Next is you use a little bit of your ego and mind, and that's where you do it through 2 things. Through your subconscious beliefs, which means you've had some past experiences, but you're very subconscious, like you have not understood what are the different perspectives, and using your subconscious beliefs, you have made a decision. My personal thing is instinct. If you're making decisions using your instincts and subconscious beliefs, please step back, because I don't think rarely those decisions are probably the right decisions. If they happen to be right, that is just by fluke. They are just by accident, but they are not a thought through decisions. The next, I would say, slightly better is conscious beliefs, which means you are in your conscious zone and you are asking yourself, look, what are the different perspectives and what are a few things I need to think through with my conscious mind. I would say this is still better than others, but still it is based on your past beliefs. Beliefs are always of the past. Oh, I have done these 10 projects before, or this, I've treated these 10 cases before. That's why I'm doing it based on the conscious beliefs. If you truly want to make the decisions which are most meaningful, I'd say use your mind and soul. And you operate from your soul when you are in that absolute zone of the consciousness, the higher levels I talk about, the making a difference and the selflessness zone. There you use 3 things. One is values driven, which is why I said being value driven is probably most important, because use your values. Whatever are your top 3 values, it could be accountability, it could be gratitude, it could be doing the right thing, it could be discipline, but start with your values. Then use your intuition a little bit. Just because something happened in the past, that doesn't have to be your future decision. And your intuitive mind works when you're away from all of these, say, your senses thinking and your mind dominating your thinking as well. And then inspiration. Most decisions we take need to inspire the people on the ground, and they could be hard or tough, but they have to still inspire the people on the ground. And I thought I'd share 2 of the decisions, and both are probably related to some people and some teams. So this was, I would say, 5-6 years ago. I was shipping a product first time on the cloud, and we have never ever shipped an applications on the cloud. It was an on-premise application. We have to ship it on the cloud. And that's the first time, and that time Microsoft Azure was going through a lot of feature changes and other things. And we were 2 months away from the release. I look at the performance of our application and it was pathetic. We wanted to ship an application which can have at least 500 users on the server per hour, but our application at best was scaling to like 3,000. And some of the services and APIs were still very flaky. Our developer was like, 100% convinced that don't worry, we'll get the new API, we're going to do it. Let's just go, even if it is live, we will make the decision. And I have two things in mind. One is I have this team member whom I have to promote to director. And I didn't know about my promotion, but I know I was also doing well for those 2 years. And if this project goes well, they may consider me. But that was not the main reason at all. And then third, on the other end, I have that if this product ships, somehow my intuition was telling me that we are literally shipping bad quality to our customers. And it probably 50% accident may work, but my intuition kept telling me this is not the right thing. And I had to make a decision. Past beliefs and past data showed that it's okay to go live and absolutely do, like, if there is something online, we'll fix it. But when I did a lot of information gathering and I look back at my values and some of my intuition, it kept telling me this was not the right decision. So I told my developers and others, I am ready to face the heat from all the VPs. Let's go. He said, Madhuri, we're not going to support you in the room. I said, that's fine. Let's go and have the discussion in the room. So I went into the room, and of course, and by the way, I was raised in this very conservative families where it was intimidating for me. At that time, it was intimidating to walk into a group of very senior leaders, that too primarily men, and that too primarily A-type personalities. But somehow I gathered the courage and I said, if I'm doing the right thing, if I have all the data, why should I worry about it? So I went prep and they were literally grilling me in that whole thing. And I explained them, I showed them a lot of data, why this is good for the company, but not good for our customers. And then finally, I think I was able to convince them. But the good thing is after 2 months, that API didn't come through. The decision we took was right. Had we shipped it, I would say at least close to 50,000 users would have been affected with that. And they promoted that person, they promoted me as well.
हाँ जी
I think
पता नहीं अभी अकल नहीं है फिर उषा मासी को भी बता दिया मैंने उधर बलदेव अंकल उषा मासी
I think, yeah, sure. There's some. So I think the reason I was sharing this with you is there are benefits of absolutely using your soul mind for your decisions. And second, if you take it with your intuition, you will stand up. And that's when comes to your values. My value has always been do the right thing for your organization. And of course, I fought for that person under me with my boss saying that irrespective of what that release went through, that guy did his job well. So do the right thing for your people, do the right thing for customers as well. Now, let me give you another example where I felt I did the right thing for the person and the organization, but it took time for that person to understand. It took 1 year later. So there was this person in my group, very, very talented person. One of, I would say, my most trusted manager under me. I would really give him hard things and very bold things any day because such sincere, value-driven manager. What happened was he was going through some personal challenges. His father-in-law was suddenly diagnosed with autoimmune disease. His wife had a very complicated pregnancy, and we were in the middle of a very important release. He was unable to handle it. Then I called him one day and said, hey, first, tell me what are your priorities in your life? And then he said, my family, God, work, money, and we've listed all of them. I said, why don't you stack rank all of them? What is most important? Of course, he stack ranked and said, my family, health, and then, of course, money, job, and other things. I said, how about I find another job for you in the same organization? Because in this job, 24 hours is not becoming enough for you. You're not able to do justice to your family. And somebody as good as you, I don't want you to do not so good work because one, it affects the customers, two, it affects your credibility, three, it affects our team as well. He was not convinced. He felt he could do that job. But from my own experience of watching, it took 3-4 sessions. But thankfully, he trusted me. Finally, I had to tell him, look, you have to trust me here. I know you're not happy with this decision, but I'd really want you to take care of your family. I'm finding another role for you. In that role, I'll ensure you have a good job. He's a single breadwinner in the family. I said, I'll ensure you get the right increments, right salary. It's just that it won't be this role. He was unhappy. He was in tears. I felt very difficult to make the decision, but I wanted to make the right decision for him and his family and also for our organization. The reason I share this example is when you're a leader, you also have to do important things for your organization and people. We all go through emotions. I think we can continue to always favor people, but sometimes the balance is also important. Somehow he trusted me, even though he was not happy, he took that decision. And then thankfully, his father in law recovered, delivered a beautiful baby. 1 year later, publicly, he is told to many teams, if not for Madhuri's advice and decision that day, I would not be what. And just in this year, we are promoting him. And the promotion took maybe 1.5 years longer, but that was not the point, right? At that point of time, our business didn't suffer. His credibility.
Hello.
Ma'am, you're speaking on mute.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, what did I just unmute for a long time or just now? What was the last line you heard from me?
You were describing about her wife delivered the baby and then promoted, and he publicly said about you.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So I was just saying in the end that I'm not saying all of this to brag about me, but this is all humbleness and teachings I've learned from Swami through his leadership and spirituality teachings. And today I feel very happy that I've not only helped him in his professionally, but I also helped him in his personal life. So that's a good segue to the next slide. If you go to the next slide. Gati, if you go to your next slide. Yeah. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just thought I'd read out the good attributes of successful leaders and how it relates to all the 6 things I told you. Some good attributes of successful leaders is ability to make decisions, integrity, enthusiasm, your innovation and creativity, hard work, analytical abilities, understanding others, ability to spot opportunities, ability to deal through such tough situations, ability to adapt quickly, ambiguity, complexity, to take risks, your capacity to speak in a most inspiring way, and your ability to really administer and make things happen, your open mindedness, your ability to stick to your goals and vision, and your single minded focus on things, your capacity to write your thoughts, your curiosity, your capacity to stay abstract vision. All of these are great attributes. But the good news to all of you is all you need is 6 things to do all of this. And those 6 things are nothing but what I just told you. They're all related to courage, willpower, initiative, knowledge, ability to deal with people, knowledge of self. So that's why I wanted to tell you, you can be having the top 25 attributes of most successful leaders in the world. All you have to focus is on those 6 things. If you focus on those 6 things, what I've explained you through Swami's teachings, you will get into your selflessness zone. If you're in that selflessness zone, you have actually moved up the levels of consciousness and you will continuously operate from that zone in a most transformative way. If you go to the next slide. I just want to leave you with what Swami says in his teachings. If there is righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there is beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. If there is harmony in the home, there will be order in the nations. When there is order in the nations, there is peace in the world. And it took a few years for me to understand what Swami meant by this. But those of you who are much younger than me, I'd like you to probably imbibe this much earlier. I think I have 10-year-old twins, and if there is one thing I tell them all the time, which is be a global citizen and always think what is the difference you're making to the world. And I feel everything else is what happens. It starts with your righteousness in the heart. If you start there, as you can clearly see, there will be peace in the world, there will be happiness in the world. Most of what jobs we do in the leaders, ask yourself, why are we in these professions? If I am in the technology world, I am creating technology so that it make lives of people, I would say, much better, much faster. And there are so many examples, right? Like with artificial intelligence, we can predict forest fires, we can help farmers do many things. I think what we do as lawyers, what we do as chartered accountants, what we do as doctors to save lives, everything we are doing, please start with that righteousness, selflessness in your heart, and then you will absolutely see miracles and transformation happening inside you and outside you as well. I know it's been a long monologue, so I'm going to stop here. I have many other stories and things, but we'll speak as we go. But I want to make sure we have good time for some discussion and Q&A.
So do you want them to shoot out questions to you, Madhuri?
Yes, I'd love to take questions, thoughts, whatever you'd like to hear from me.
I've seen hands raising there.
Brother Sanjay, I think you've raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Sairam ma'am, this is Sanjay here from Bangalore. So I picked a couple of beautiful statements which you gave in the beginning of your talk. So that is, say what you do what you say, and then you said you get up and then you want to make a difference, and that's what is driving you. So in this context, I had a question. It's the same question. Question for keeping these two statements in mind. So you will always have people that you want to live with certain ideals. You have kept certain ideals for yourself, but you always have people around you who in a professional and in a corporate world, you find them more. They try to do all things which are not in tandem with what you keep for yourself, certain priorities, certain thought processes. So in that situation, that how do you bring yourself and that motivation or that thought process to still abide by what you have set for yourself, how without letting that bring you down?
Actually, excellent question, Sanjay. Thanks for asking that question. I went through that myself because I was this, I would say, idealism everywhere. And when I did not see that idealism around me, I realized, oh my goodness, how could anybody be here? Why are they angry? Why are they disrespectful? And things like that. And I'll tell you what, I got an advice from one auntie in Sai Center. And then, of course, I'll tell you what I did differently in my professional journey. And auntie told me that, Madhuri, if everybody was ideal, if everybody was had all the values, do you think one, the world would be like this? Two, why do you think Swami or any other spiritual masters have all existed? Because they're really trying to influence and change them in their journey. So her advice to me was, irrespective of what others are, can you be yourself? And she said, that's a good testimony and test for your own journey. When she said that, Sanjay, it really was very hard for me. Like, how do I do that? Because there were many meetings, I could clearly see that the other person was very focused on themselves. They're trying to solve a problem which absolutely doesn't solve for the organization. And I was disappointed. But what I learned over time was I was persistent about expressing my opinion. For example, if I felt that something was incorrect, then I took time in my own style. Like, three things I've stuck to is I'm very optimistic, I'm very soft spoken, and I'm very respectful and kind. I have not changed these values, even though in corporates it's not easy. So two things I've tried is, one, if that decision is not right for somebody or people, I kept bringing it up. Hey, I said, I think that's a good point, but I'm not sure if that's going to help this person, if that's going to, can we rethink? Or I've had a few good connects with others, leaders whom I could go and influence, but I didn't give up. I said influencing. Second, Sanjay, I realized is irrespective if the others were not kind to me or respectful to me, I continued my journey. Irrespective of how they were, I always responded in the most, I would say, objective way, respectful and kind way. And it may sound, I would say, philosophical, but the reality is when I continued to do that 3, 4, 5, 10 times, the other person did change. Because eventually they have seen that you are consistent in what you do and the others have not. And I'll give an example there. And I mean, this is how I look, by the way, most of the times. I wear Indian outfits most of the times, and I look very Indian and traditional, but I worked in many other countries all of through as well. So when somebody looks at me, one, I'm smiling all the time. Two, I look very traditional. So they can make all kinds of perceptions about me. So there was this perception about me in even big companies for a while that, oh, she's very soft spoken, she's so optimistic all the time. I don't know, can she do good, hard things, tough, transformative things as well? And I did not have as much courage as I had today, but 10 years ago, thankfully, I had good allies and leaders. They said, what makes you think an optimistic person and a soft spoken person can't do it? Because everybody can't come to the table and thumping the chest and, like, beating the table and using that aggressive language. And they have given me hard things, and that's where I think I use my thought, deed, and words. And when someone works with people like us for 3-4 months, they will see that happen. So I'll just leave you with this one thing. However others are, stick to your values, stick to your things, and believe me, Sanjay, it will bring a change in others around you. I'll share another story. So when I joined this current organization 4 years ago, I have this habit of gratitude, because how do you express your love to anybody in corporate, right? You are constantly thanking for what they do. So we have this leadership survey, 360 degrees survey. I did that survey, and it was an anonymous survey. Someone said, Madhuri has to balance giving too much of praises and gratitude, because the person's performance in the work is different. And then we were all reviewing our feedback. It was a group of 10 senior directors and a VP in the room. And I said, look, I differentiate performance from gratitude. If it's a performance thing, I will give that performance feedback in the rating. We have a review process, right? Most corporates have it. But that should not stop me from thanking them. And I said, if that is not valued here, I'll find another job. Because I said, I cannot exist without thanking people. And 2 years later, Sanjay, now everybody has learned to express gratitude. Nobody in that 100 people organization will not complete 1 week without expressing gratitude. So it's become a phenomenon right now. So just stay persistent a little bit with what you believe.
Thank you, ma'am. Sairam.
Sairam ma'am. It's me, Sucheta Chakravarti from Jharkhand. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, Sucheta.
Okay. Ma'am, in your experience, when you are working on a team project, do you want to make the most decision, or do you prefer to step back and follow someone else's guideline?
Yeah, excellent question, Sucheta.
Thank
I think it depends upon the stage of the project, but let me give you 2-3 suggestions, right? If you're a newcomer, can you hear me, Sucheta?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So let's say you're a newcomer on the team. It may be better to start with following a little bit, because like that knowledge of the job, you have to build the knowledge of the job. So first develop the expertise and then ask around, hey, who's the most looked up expert here? And if you are not convinced of whatever they are saying, go to that expert and say, hey, I'm not sure if this is sure. Do you think I should follow this? Or things like that. So it's okay to be in that followership for a while. But later, once you have the knowledge of the job, then I think it's also sometimes important to state your point of view. See, of course, if there are 10 people in the meeting, we can't follow all the 10 people's ideas. Somebody has to integrate these 10 ideas and come with what is the best idea. I always tell my team, don't think about who's right, think about what is the best idea. And if you genuinely believe, Sucheta, that somebody's idea was good, then go ahead and follow it. But if your like intuition keeps telling me, look, no, there is a different idea, then please bring it up and say, hey, I have another perspective. Can we please discuss about it? So influencing and following, sometimes both are important based on which you are. So I suggest you to experiment with both as you go, because as you grow in your career, Sucheta, influencing becomes important. People want to hear different perspectives, different ideas.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Madam, I'm Shubda from Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. My question is that when you spoke about, when you expanded on how Maslow, the psychological aspect of Maslow's theory, one question that I had was, you told us that, see, when we work to, about a job with utmost sincerity, we naturally develop this habit of needing to be acknowledged. But you, like you said, it happens with everybody. But how do we evolve from that at an accelerated rate so that we evolve to the final stage where we do not need this and we can become better leaders and better spiritual aspirants through this journey? That's my question, madam. Thank you, Sairam.
Oh my God, what an enlightening question, Shubhada. I wish I asked this when I was as young as you. So I'm so glad you're asking this question so early in life. I think in my case, I'll tell you, and I definitely want you all to leapfrog, was I was born, raised in a very conservative family where I did not have many role models of women in computer science or engineering or others like, around me. And I came from a very lower middle class family. So survival was very important. I wanted to make sure we had enough money, we cleared all the loans. So that survival and relationships itself took some time. And then I fought a lot with my imposter syndrome, saying, am I good enough? And I realized that I don't know if I'm good enough until 10 other people really tell me. And that's what is the validation. But where it changed was, I think, in my, I would say, late 20s. I've been doing, I've always gone to Swami's bhajans since the age of 13. But along with bhajans, I also started a lot of inner meditation, thoughtfulness, mindfulness, and things like that. I would say when I was 27, 28 years old. And then when I was into that zone of like really stepping back, calming down, and telling myself, that thoughts constantly came into me saying that I think I am good enough to what I am. Let me accept my perfections and imperfections. And I realized I was influenced by maybe media, by maybe people around me. Oh, if it is a girl, she has to be fair looking, she has to be tall, she has to talk well, she has to sing well. Or if it is a corporate, you should be able to present really well, or you should be able to, or only when 10 people say you're good. But my journey, that shift happened when I really started telling myself that why don't I accept as I am? If I accept as I am, and if I tell myself, like, every day my job is to just grow, develop, and learn, I think I made peace with myself. And that for me, and there are different ways to happen. For me, Shubhada, it happened when I started more meditations and more mindfulness as well, because I never sat with myself. So when I just sat with myself, when I started singing for myself, when I started doing that meditation, I just felt that strong connection between me and the universe, where I felt, look, everything is available around me, and I can never be perfect any day. But if I just go with that good intent to do that. So now coming to your question on how do you accelerate? One, I would say, is say certain positive affirmations to yourself. It sounds simple and silly, but believe me, it works. Like every day before you go to bed, you can tell yourself, I'm as good as I am. I am enough. I am confident. I'm courageous. The more you actually train your subconscious to tell yourself, that's one. Second is find some alone time with yourself. I've learned through spirituality that there's difference between aloneness and loneliness. I was very afraid of loneliness before, but then over the years, I loved aloneness. Sometimes if you don't sit alone with yourself, you won't learn your self-worth yourself as well. And third, of course, I think when you learn to take praise and critic in the same way, then you have arrived. So the another good way, Shubhada, is start asking people, hey, what are 2 things I could do better? Then I think you will get used to hearing things. And then I think we're not only looking for praises. And by the way, that's a good, while I work in big tech companies, I'm not a big fan of social media at all. Especially things like these likes in Facebook or Instagrams and everything. Because my worry a little bit is this, it is driving this thing of I post a picture, I posted something. If 100 people don't like it, then that's not good. And I've had this one of my leadership coach's daughter. She was only barely 18, and she told her dad, they're from Europe. She told her dad, Dad, I'm out of Facebook. Because the moment I'm here, I'm constantly comparing myself with others. So that's the last thing. I mean, if you're fans of social media, please do use it. But I think that could be a few other things I can think of. But start the journey right now, Shubhada. I'm so glad you're thinking about it. You'll be much more happier and peaceful and proud of who you are.
Thank you, madam. Just one more part to the question. Like what you just said, how you highlighted about social media. I have experienced the same thing, seeking validation outside, from outside sources. But lately I've understood that it is not a true validation and it is not as satisfying as it might seem to be. So I have withdrawn from it. Is that a wise thing to do, or would that be called escapism? Because we need to exist in the world that is in the state right now. And so I'd like to know if it is escapism or is that a good thing to do? Is it wise to do?
No, I'm so amazed at your thinking, how you're thinking. I'll tell you my personal thing. I don't think there's right or wrong. For me, it was not escapism because, by the way, I came out of Facebook about 7-8 years ago because I didn't want to. But to your point, we need to exist in this world. But my suggestion is go back and exist when you have gone through those higher levels of consciousness. Because for me, Shubhada, in the last, I would say 10 years, I don't seek validation from outside anymore. And that helps me immensely at work as well. And now, whether I'm on LinkedIn or other places, it doesn't impact my mind as much. So, but for that, you should do some practice. It's okay to escape. See, it is a good thing when certain things are influencing your way of life. It's okay to be away from them as long as you're not losing something. For example, if you run a business and your business will prosper better, or let's say you're running a non-profit, your campaigns will do better if you put it on Insta or Facebook. Absolutely do it, because the purpose is you want the world to know. But I wouldn't say that moving away just for these personal things of whether it is likes or whatever, that's not escapism in my opinion. For me, it's just that I don't want, why do I want to go there and experience all of this? I'd rather use that time for something else. My kids make fun of me that other than LinkedIn, I'm not on any social media because I just felt, is that the wise use of my time? And by the way, to some extent, even LinkedIn is social media. But LinkedIn, I go and post because I have this genuine intent to share my knowledge with others or learn from everything. So when I'm reading, I'm absolutely focused. My mind is not getting attracted to few other things as well.
Thank you, ma'am, for differentiating between escapism and strength of character. Thank you. Sairam.
Sairam, ma'am. This is Anita from Orissa.
Hi, Anita.
Ma'am, I wanted to make a question. I recently joined a law firm here at Hyderabad. And in general, the way, the kind I am, I feel, I felt that I'm a really confident girl, very bold, very independent, everything. But now that I've joined this new job, the work culture is a bit different, and the complete environment is different, and I feel so underconfident, and I because of this underconfidence, I make a lot of mistakes, and it has been hurting my ego up to a large extent. I know the subject, but somehow, I'm not able to keep myself at pace with what's happening in the new place. And you spoke about confidence, that you were not the same confident 10 years ago. But what I feel about myself is I was all time confident, but now, after maybe, after a long time, I feel really underconfident, and I don't know, I try to escape from work. I'm trying to avoid certain assignments given to me, just for the fear that I don't want to sound wrong, or to do anything wrong and get some bad remarks. Ma'am, with your kind of experience at corporates, can you please shed some light to how to feel, a bit more confident than what I am, or maybe, or at least to go back where I was.
Thank you, Anita.
Before Madhuri, before you answer that question, Anita, if you have come to Hyderabad, how come you have not told us first? You have come to my city.
Sairam uncle, I was always at Hyderabad itself. It's just that I switched jobs now.
Okay, right. Then, if you're talking about confidence, the best thing you have to get confidence is to meet Madhuri and Gopi over a cup of coffee. You'll get confidence. Over to you, Madhuri.
I mark this as an appointment fixed, and I would definitely make sure that I meet you guys.
Yes, this is like a public appointment for you. Firstly, I want to commend you, Anita, for being, I would say, so vulnerable. Like, it's not easy in a public forum to share this. So your journey is half begun. I think when most people, by the way, they blame others. They're very defensive. And it's so good to see that how you're thinking through this. I'll tell you 2-3 things, but first is mentors are very important, Anita, when you come to a new firm like this, because it's nothing but a little intimidating work atmosphere, right? Because the atmosphere is new, the work culture is new, and I don't know how the work culture is. And when we meet one on one, we can talk about it, because some work cultures are like that. I was fortunate, I was part of many work cultures which are very welcoming. They give you a lot of time. For example, I'll tell you, in my company and team, when someone joins, we give them a buddy, we give them trainings. They literally have 3 months to learn everything. And we tell them, like, we are called Googlers, but if somebody is new, they're called Nooglers. So we said Nooglers is like, this is your time to make mistakes, learn, do everything. We are here for you and everything. So certain times, if the work culture is not there, unfortunately, it's not in your hands to change the work culture. But my suggestion one is to start from a good mentor. I'm assuming there is somebody in that firm whom you can rely and go back and say, hey, can I just understand how things work here? What are certain things? This is my subject. I know this subject really well, but I'm ending up doing these 2-3 things. What are a few things? So that's one thing, is mentorship. For me, mentorship helped a lot. Because Anita, in many forums, I was the only woman in the meeting. I was only woman in that group, or I was an only Indian in that foreign country, and it was a little difficult to navigate for me. And it's good and bad, right? I'm a learner at heart, and I always wanted to learn, but at the same time, I don't want to jump into things without learning enough. So that's why for me, mentors played a good role. One is find a good mentor. I think second is what 2-3 mistakes you do is not a reflection of who you are. It's just that in that particular project. So whether you like it or not, Anita, you have to tell yourself every day that I am learning. This is a new project. Yes, I have done 2-3 things, but that is not reflective of who you are for the past, like, let's say 20 plus years since the time you're born. You have done many things. You yourself are saying you're very confident. You've done things as well. And a new environment. The third thing I'll tell you is ask what if. What if you make mistakes? What if people think like, you're not, your intent is not wrong, right? You're not slacking your work. You went with an absolute intent of learning well. It's slightly complex maybe, or certain things you're not understanding in that work culture. So the third question I always ask myself is, So what if I do mistakes, right? My intent is to learn anyway. If not this job, we'll do another job. It's not end of it. But most of the times with the mentorship and with you like not giving up and being a little focused on, hey, it's okay if I do a mistakes, let me not give up who I am, is the two things I try. And the last is, if you're really feeling underwhelmed any day, I ask these two questions to myself. One is, does this matter? Does this matter 5 years later? Will I cry about it? Will I laugh about it? Will I worry about it? Will I smile about it? Because a lot of times in the short term feel like too intense. Later, I think it'll feel like, really, why did I stress for that? And the second thing, of course, is what if, right? If there are so many people who want to hire accomplished people like you as well. And this is what, by the way, my mentor told me once, Sanita. He always said, Madhuri, when you work for a company or when you go for an interview, remember the company and the team needs you as much as you need them. We have this tendency, just because of our servant leadership mindset, that when we work in a company or when we go to an interview, we think, oh my God, am I deserving or not? But they should also deserve us. And that was, I think, goes through as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This means a lot. I've been going through a lot of hustle tussle, and people don't tend to understand, you are so confident. This is just the way you're talking like that. But I genuinely felt underconfident for a long time by now. And this is really helpful. And I'll definitely look into, how can I put the tips given by you, in like next time I start feeling low about my career or maybe, the work environment.
And call us, like Gopanaya said, although he said that, I think what he says is true. Sometimes people who lift you up are very important in your life, Anita. And like, for example, some of you might know Ganga, Gopi uncle's wife as well. And she's a great mentor to me when it comes to how can I raise kids and do the job. Every time I think, can I balance? And most of the times I've done very senior leadership roles. Every time I think, do I have the confidence of raising two kids and also doing a good job? I just call her when I just feel underwhelmed. She tell me some three good things and that gives my confidence back. So it is human, Anita, to go through this. But when you come out of it, right, that's when I think we have to experience a few emotions and come out of it. We can't be in that same, I would say, happy zone and then confident zone all the time. I think it's a sine wave, and that's what makes life more meaningful, I'd say.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Sairam.
Sairam.
Sairam, ma'am.
Sairam, ma'am. This is Aditya from.
Sairam.
Sairam, ma'am, this is Priya from Chennai. We are very happy to have you live here after our 2017's Balvikas meet at Prashanti Nilayam. So since then, you have been my very inspiring and my favorite Indian tech giant also. Thank you so much for spending a valuable time with us amongst your hectic schedule, ma'am. I have 3 queries to ask you. My first question to you is, do we really have something called as work-life balance? Is work-life balance a myth or truth? If work-life balance is a truth, then how do you manage as a tech giant? And my second question is, how do you set priorities among the priorities? The day in and day out, whatever activities I'm carrying out everything comes under my priorities list. But when I start doing a particular job, my priority and the deadlines for the other job gets vanished so quickly that I'm not able to meet them in appropriate manner. So how to set priorities among the priorities? And my third question is what is the secret mantra that keeps you, so energetic and so optimistic all day throughout your life? If you could share that as secret mantra, probably we could also imbibe that in our lives, and we could also probably make a small difference in someone's life. Thank you, ma'am. Sairam.
Sairam, let me know if you see my screen. I wanted to show you all something. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Does it say well-being?
Yes.
Okay. So I will share this later. I created this with to many people in Google and Microsoft because they always ask me, Madhuri, you have 2 kids and like you are in a senior role. How do you balance it? This I take this workshop for 1 hour usually, but I'm going to give you an answer in couple of like 3-4 minutes maybe. First thing is to your point, Priya. I personally think work-life balance is a myth. Work-life integration is what I do. First thing is I don't consider work as work. I really consider work as a part of what I love to do. But I put some boundaries here and there, and I'll just explain you. First is I think it's important for you to think. See, people think well-being is just one thing. That's not true. First is physically, I think you need to be aware of your body. So take care of your body, like, eat healthy food, sleep well, nurture and take your physical being. Second is your emotional. Like the stress is inevitable. Every day you have stress because of emotions. But you have to become attentive to your thoughts, feelings, behaviors. And that's when you start awareness of your emotions. Next is occupational, what Anita just talked about, right? She may have physical, emotional things, but if occupationally you're not engaging in your work, it's not meaningful to you, it's stressing you, it's not aligning with your values and life purpose, it brings you stress. Of course, social is, do you have meaningful relationships in your life? So you asked me second question, right? How do you set your priorities? So
Yes.
I'll tell you 2-3 things I do, right? One is I have many priorities like my husband, my kids, my work, my family, friends, health, spirituality, volunteering. But I have a clear stacked ranked order of these priorities, and I regularly see how much time I'm spending on these. Then I make choices with utmost clarity because I always know my stack rank order. And I'll give an example. My twins were 2 years old. We had to make a decision. I wanted to come to India, to relocate to India from US. But it's not an easy decision, right? Because we had a very big house in US. We had 2 luxury cars. We were earning well, financially happy, great friends, and everything, right? But my top of priority was my parents. I felt my parents and in-laws, if my kids don't experience the family, then they would have lost an experience in life, which I can never give them back. Second, I felt that my parents have sacrificed a lot for my education and career. So I felt like spending my old age with them. So it wasn't, choices are multiple. Like I had an amazing job in US in Microsoft with all those things. But because my priorities were clear, my priority is my kids have to experience grandparents and I have to spend time in their old age in India. Everything else is secondary. I said I will find job what I get in India. So second example is when my twins were 1 year old, it was very difficult for me to manage. I was in US at that point of time. I wanted to work part time, and everyone said, "Don't do it because Madhuri, you are one of the top professionals in Microsoft. My ratings were extremely good." They said, "If you go part time, your career will be like slowed down." Thankfully, one VP came and told me, Madhuri, you're very young. You're in like 31, 32. You have 30 years of career. Choose your priority. My priority was, can I enjoy childhood with my kids? Because childhood is not going to come back. So like that, I think because my priorities are clear, I make choices with utmost clarity and I don't regret about it. Second is I manage my energy. Like, managing time is you have 24 hours. But if you're in high energy, then you can manage your time. And how do I manage your energy, right? I think there are many tips, but let me tell you one or two. If you know what is that happy, blissful, calm state, when you deviate from it, you need to know. And how will you know that? When you have your knowledge of self, knowledge of emotions. Like I think someone said, I'm not feeling happy with my job, or I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling sad. If you know that, you'll bring yourself back. So know your stress triggers, know your energy and emotions. And when you move away, bring yourself back. And when I have high energy, I can get 5 things done as well. Last is focus on what I can do. I think very, very early in my life, I realized there are many things outside of my control. and there's no point worrying about it, right? So I always believed if there is something I can control, let me do, and then happiness comes from inside of me. So these two things, right, constantly take me away. Now bringing all these together, if my priorities are clear, I make better choices at work. If certain day my kids' health is more important, even if it's a presentation to VP, I'm fine, I'll delegate it to someone. But if a certain day I have to, and there was a day like this 1.5 years ago, it's a very important presentation to influence a lot of funds for us to develop tools. And I just recovered from my sickness, but thankfully that day with some good medicines, I was able to go do 1 hour presentation and came back. But I also realized how I was a single point of failure in my org. So I groomed somebody else to do that job. So you choose here and there. There are certain days I work long hours. There are certain days if my energy is not there, I don't work at all. I'm just spending time with my kids and others. And I have a lot of rituals. And it's easy, but all of us can do this. But practice makes anybody perfect. The thing I'd leave you with is have rituals. And I'll tell you my top rituals. I start and end the day with gratitude. So please don't start and end the day with emails and WhatsApps and phones. You start and end of the day makes a huge difference. I sleep well. I try to eat as much as healthy food. And I have passions. My passion is singing. My passion is traveling and experiencing the world. My passion is social volunteering because they really feed my soul. And I try to sometimes have a gadget free weekends. I try to create time for my family and me so that I live up to those things as well. And other things I think we can talk later. I help people. How do I prioritize my work? And this is one thing I'll leave you with. Life is like a glass jar, same as your time. You can fill it with rocks, pebbles, and sand, but just if you fill your jar with full of sand, your rocks won't have time to go inside. So first fill it with rocks, keep your priorities clear, then fill it with small pebbles, then fill it with sand. The same jar can actually take a lot of things as well. And this is what I send. You can read this Harvard Business Review. Go and type on Google, manage your energy. You'll find this. There are some amazing tips on how you can increase your energy. And that's, I would say, a good segue to the last question. How do I stay energetic all the time? I dip in, there is physical, emotional, spiritual energy. Of course, physically, I'm in 40s. There are days I need to sleep more. I get tired. So absolutely take care of my physical body. But I dip in a lot into my spiritual energy. And spiritual energy comes for me when I'm in service of others or when I would say, deeply believing that happiness and love is inside of me. Keep sharing these with others. Those are my long answer to your 3 questions.
Thank you so much for your inspiring and thought-provoking note, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Sairam.
Sairam.
Sairam, madam, this is Aditya. So I have 2 questions. One thing is about we already know that selflessness is a true thing for leadership, but sometimes we go into situation. I mean, our self always says that first achievement for yourself is important than giving the benefits to the. I mean, giving priority team. So how do we overcome that feeling? Like we always okay, first one achievements come to me, and then I let the team appreciate. So that kind of feeling sometimes I get. So how do we overcome that? And second thing is I always get a feeling that how others feel about it. There are 2 things about, like, one is positive and negative. One is whether they are okay with my job or I mean how I am doing, how I am performing. And the second thing is if sometimes if my manager or someone is not maybe involving in some mails or something, I always feel that okay, do they feel bad about it, or am I not working well? Such kind of feeling will be there. Is it good or bad, and how to, if it is bad, how to overcome that?
No, very, very, I would say, insightful questions. Let me start with your second question. I think the best way to know whether you're doing a good job or not is just asking your team members. Usually, I have observed this, Aditya, that when you're genuine and authentic, whether it's your one on one, you can send them an email, you can send them an anonymous survey, whatever makes it easy. Ask them, hey, what can I do more for you as a manager and a leader? And I have a template, by the way. I have 10 questions I ask with all my people, and I keep it up to date. I ask them, what does success mean to you? What does happiness mean to you? What are your goals? What can I do in helping you achieve your goals? So, being in service of them is something you can't do once. The regular meetings you have with your team, you first understand what are their goals. And most of the times I tell people, as a manager and leader, you should understand what does success mean to them and what does happiness mean to them, because it's very different. Some people say power, some people say money, some people say a position, some people say scope. It's very different and there's nothing wrong. Like, I have two people in my team who say, Madhuri, I'm going through financially a lot of things and I have to support this family or a few things like, in the society. So it's really important for me to get good increments, which is good, which means that more than the scope, I'm focused on giving them projects where there are monetary benefits for them, right? So first start with that. Next is ask them genuinely, maybe if not every week, at least once a month, ask them, hey, what do you think? Is there anything I can do better? What should I continue to do? And tell them, if you're not comfortable, here's a survey. Feel free to send it to your whole team. They will, if you ask feedback and you thank them for it and you implement some of it back to our thought, deed, words, and actions, they will absolutely keep telling you. And after 6 months or so, it will become their DNA. Then next time you tell them, see, don't wait for me to ask you. My door is open, my inbox is open. Just tell me when you don't see me doing certain things or certain things are resonating with you. I'll happy to do that. So that's the second one. I think the first one is a tricky one, I'd say, because I think if you look at that levels of the leadership I talked about, I think if there is any amount of validation or survival needed, I tell people, then first be an individual contributor for a certain time. Like, make sure you know your worth. Make sure you know that you are there you are already doing a good job and you're adding value and things like that. And then take the responsibility of a manager or a leader. Because and you've seen me use the word leadership a lot, right? I rarely use the word manager. Somehow I'm a big fan of leadership. For me, management is, you don't manage people, right? Lead people, lead with inspiration. So I feel if you are taking a role of a manager or a leadership, then the number one thing is you have to be in the service of your team. So that's why it's okay initially, probably in the first 3 to 6 months, it's okay to say, hey, let me understand the thing. Let me also make sure I am doing the right things in this project before I do it. But it can't sustain for long. If it is beyond, I would say, a couple of months, then you will not be respected by your team saying, or then they'll think this person is all about themselves, or you won't be able to inspire them. Most of the times people get inspired when they believe in their mind and hearts that you are about them.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the suggestion. Definitely, I will start implementing these two things that you have suggested.
Sairam?
I think we're getting late also. It's already 9:15. If anyone else has questions, maybe you can post it on the group and one of our team members will actually compile them and send it to Madhuri. And I'm sure that Madhuri will take time to answer them, either directly to you or through the group, right? So it's 9:15 already. What's the time right now? It's about 9:10.
9:10.
So, Madhuri, how much time do you want to take to wind up now?
I don't need more than a minute to wind up.
Oh, maybe we'll give you another 5 to 10 minutes to wind up, Madhuri.
Okay. Cool. First,
somebody was asking a question.
Was there another question?
Sairam, I'm Isha from Haryana. So connecting to the last question, like I am a team lead in one of the company. So being a team leader, I have faced one common issue is that in your team you have 20 to 30% of population is that kind of a rigid person and not ready to take you up your suggestions and not completing the task on time, and you are accountable to the top management for that failure. So how would I handle these kind of situation, because they are not ready to not willing to take the participation in any of the team events also. So how would I handle these kind of situations?
And that's a really common situations I think we face in our teams as well.
Yes.
I think first thing is being a leader doesn't mean that we are like we're always happy, smiling, praising people as well. So being a leader also means that when it is tough times, we do tough things. And by the way, I compare my leadership to my parenting. I don't know how many of you in this call are parents. For me, I have seen like I love my child the most, but that doesn't mean that I'm very lenient to the child all the time. If there are certain things which is not in alignment with the values or which is not good for them or for the family, of course I'm stern. Of course I put my foot down and say. So in such situations, I definitely don't hesitate to give the feedback. I like to give private feedback. I don't believe in humiliating people in the public because it affects their confidence. So typically I call them one on one and say, hey, I have been observing this, and but tell me what's going on. And I have two suggestions there. Many people go to your team employees and say as if it's a fact, and that usually makes them defensive. So these are a better words to use in my perspective, which is to say, hey, this is what I'm hearing or this is what I'm interpreting. Can you tell me what's going on from your side? Because I'd like to understand the facts. But if you tell something as if it is a fact, then the other person will think that you have no inclination in listening to them. First, give them that listening ear, ask them what is going on. Maybe they have something going on personally, we don't know that. But if you're convinced that it's a lack of will, then of course you have to tell them that look, if it is a lack of will, then it is absolutely impacting our project. So I'm happy to give you another mentor or somebody to help you, or I'm otherwise I would have to like give this to somebody else because it is impacting our project deadlines. If it is lack of skill, then give them some help because they may have the will, but they may not have the skill. Then give them, I would say, a little bit of help as well. And third, in the worst case, if the will and skill, everything is an issue, and after giving multiple feedbacks, I would say they have not changed it, you will have to make the tough calls and say that, hey, unfortunately, this is not working out. We'll have to find a different project for you because this is impacting the overall things as well. But just do that in the most respectful manner and do hearing.
Thank you so much.
Sarah ma'am, you were on mute.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why suddenly it's muting me. Now, I was asking, Gopane, should I wrap it up now? Is he on the call?
Yes, ma'am, may I conclude now?
Okay, great. I'll go ahead and conclude.
Ask questions, they will populate the questions and send it to you. And you could, during the week or. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely. If you have any more questions, please send it my way and I'll share my experiences as well.
Great.
So,
you want to end it, then we have the next one from.
We're unable to hear you properly. Vaya.
I think Gopana is saying maybe we wrap up. How about I wrap up and then we can give it back to you all?
Do we have anything to close remarks or something? Then we'll actually end it with the thanks notes.
Gopana, your voice is breaking. Are you asking me, do I have anything in the closing remarks?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, just give me 1-2 minutes. I'll close it and then I'll give it back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, firstly, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Gopanaya for giving me this opportunity to interact with this amazing group. He's someone I really look up to in many ways. I many a times felt he's God sent in my life. He is a fantastic brother, a great friend, and there are times I even look up to him. I feel divine has come in his form. And there's a great story. I don't think we have time today, but there was a story where I was lost in a train and he came and helped me out of nowhere. So it is really true, literally and figuratively as well. So my heartfelt gratitude to Gopanaya for giving me this opportunity. Second, I am so grateful, privileged and honored that I had a chance today to share my experiences of leadership and spirituality with all of you. I truly feel it's a blessing from Swami in my life. I have reached many pinnacles of success in my personal and professional career, and I owe it completely to his lotus feet, to his teachings, for his inspiration, for being with me. There are many a times I wonder, am I operating or is he operating through me? And there are many things I've done in my professional career. And I felt my spiritual intelligence, spirituality has made a significant difference in my leadership journey. So if I'm successful as a leader, it is because of my spiritual experience, spiritual intelligence, and all I owe it to Swami and a lot of the volunteers who have inspired me throughout the journey. And lastly, my best wishes to all of you in this program. I always believe a journey begun is half well done. I feel so wonderful that you have all started on this journey of this leadership program. And I really wish you the very, very best in your leadership life, in your spiritual lives, both in personal, professional. And I wish you loads of success in your life and lots of love and great fulfillment, and hope your lives will be very, very meaningful and you just make the lives the way you want for yourself and others as well. Thank you again. I'll just end with one chant again, because I think without expressing my gratitude to Swami, I think any sessions are incomplete. I've always felt the universe is so vast, and then but the divine is what makes it so make it seamless. So that is what is this for. अखंड मंडलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरम् तर्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. Sai Ram.
What are you sharing? Thank you, Madhuri, for coming and speaking to our participants. God bless you. You're always blessed. Stay blessed. Chinmay?
Sarambya, thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insightful, such a wonderful session. Pray Bhagwan to bless you profusely, to keep on achieving heights after heights professionally, spiritually, and keep guiding us, inspiring us. Thank you once again on behalf of the NLP team. We look forward to listen to you in the future once more at least. Thank you so much. We'll have Santi Mantram followed by Samasta Loka, and we'll conclude the session. Jai Sai Ram.
Thank you, Sai Ram.
Jai Sai Ram.